Hello class, drama class, woo! Last presentation of the day. Hello, I've got a very special subject prepared for you today because it's really special to me because it's what I did my master's thesis on. So this is gonna be like not as extensive as the master's thesis. It's gonna be like Cliff's Notes, okay? So I want to thank my awesome sub. She has listened to me talk, or he, all day long, and that's gotta be difficult. Griffin can attest to that because he has me 3 classes a day and rehearsal at night. Oh my gosh, I almost burped. Okay, well, let's pivot and let's begin in Catholic prayer. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for my class. Thank you for my students. Thank you for the opportunity to come together and to just study some of the amazing things that you've done with the human body, which is our instrument for performing on stage. Thank you for my substitute. Thank you for protecting us. And please help us all be safely reunited tomorrow. It's in your most heavenly name we pray. Amen. Okay. Well, with that being said, let's get into it. So we've talked a little bit in class about what Meisner technique is. You remember Sanford Meisner, he was the son of an opera singer. He was a classically trained musician. He studied at the Damrosch Music School, which would eventually become, sorry, there's drilling in the background, Juilliard, the famous music conservatory. So he was a listener. He was an appreciator of music. He was a musician himself. And so his ears were very much in tune for listening to the nuance of sound. And so Meisner studied Stanislavski's technique. And Stanislavski, he was the one who really made realism an acting style that became popularized, and he moved us away from codified gesture. So we know that Sanford Meisner respected Stanislavski, but he developed a technique that worked better for him, that took some of Stanislavski's things and stole them and took others and kind of adapted them. And that's the technique that we have today. And as a musician, I feel that Meisner technique is probably the most successful technique from my personal utilization. So I want to just pass this on to you. So his technique emphasizes listening, which should be no surprise because he's a musician. And a lot of what he does to encourage the listening for the actor is in his repetition exercises. So Meisner technique would have 2 people sitting across from each other and just repeating the same word back to each other over and over and over again. And you might be like, well, what does this accomplish? Well, the goal is to repeat it almost exactly as the person who you're looking at said it. So if I were like, green cheese, you wouldn't want the actor across from me to go, green cheese. You'd want them to go, green cheese. And see, even that was slightly different than how I did it before. So the point is to listen to the nuance of those little changes and see how the sound eventually evolves. When you're really listening to the nuance of the voice, this translates to acting on stage because, as I've said before, if I deliver a line like, I love you, it's gonna be different than if I deliver it the next night like, I love you. 2 totally different meanings. And if we're not listening to those clues, we might respond to them in a way that's inappropriate to the stimuli that we received, which shows that as an actor, we're not responding organically and engaged with our scene partner. We're just kind of repeating lines as we've rehearsed them. So we're not alive in the moment. It basically takes your focus off of yourself as the actor and it puts it onto your scene partner. So observation is also a really large part of Meisner exercises. And sometimes you're repeating the observations. Your hair is brown. My hair is brown. Your hair is brown. My hair is brown. So you could do the repetition through observation. You can read more about this in Meisner's book on acting, and he breaks down his technique thoroughly there. He uses a lot of musical analogies. So again, I think musicians, those of you who love music, I think this might be a good technique for you. And there's even a Meisner and Music Institute that focuses on teaching musicians how to become better and more well-rounded performers through Meisner's technique. So it's not just me who thinks this. A lot of people think that musicianship and Meisner go hand in hand. So my goal was to study how the human voice can be used to determine whether or not a performance is truthful. This is because I would often find myself, when my cohorts were doing scene work, I would close my eyes sometimes. I wouldn't even watch them perform and I'd listen. And sometimes I'd be really moved by what I heard, and other times I'd be like, that just sounds fake. And I was talking about this to an accompanist that I worked with a lot, and he said, wait, I do that all the time. Because an accompanist is the person who plays the piano for you in a musical theater audition. And he said, usually I'm facing away from the person, or even if I'm facing them, I'm reading their sheet music, so I'm not watching their performance. I have to rely on what I hear. And based on what I'd hear, I'd sometimes already know how the people behind the table were going to react when they left the room. If they were going to say that was great, or if they were going to say, I just didn't believe her. And so I was like, there's something to this listening thing. So I started looking up police interrogation techniques, and I found that yes, the police do use the way you speak to determine whether or not you're being truthful at times. And there have been studies done on this. Now, the way your voice sounds when you say certain things is called vocal prosody. And vocal prosody is essentially the musicality of the voice. It's whether it goes up or whether it goes down. It's whether it slows down or whether it speeds up. And it's whether it gets louder at the end of the sentence or if it gets quieter at the end of the sentence. All those things go into vocal prosody. And a 2021 study showed that vocal prosody was consistently interpreted across 3 Western languages, English, French, and Spanish, to have clear indicative markers of deception, or at least the perception of deception. So even if the people couldn't prove the person speaking was lying, there were these clear indicators across 3 languages that consistently told the listener, I don't believe them. And when the people thought that the person speaking was being honest, they noticed that they had a faster tempo. They emphasized the middle of their sentences, and their volume decreased at the end of the sentence. But when they thought the person was lying, they would start out quieter, but they'd start to talk a little bit louder towards the end of the sentence. And their pitch would go up at the end of the sentence, and they'd also talk a lot slower. So across 3 languages, people interpreted the voice the same way. So I was like, okay, I'm going to direct a show, and I'm going to see if I can apply this to whether or not I can determine if my actors' performances are truthful. So I wanted an even playing field. We talk about emotional recall a lot in this class. And emotional recall is when you're like, I have a similar life experience to what this character experienced. It can be freaky similar, or it can just be, you felt similar emotions due to this. And you use that emotional recall to get you in the mood for that performance, to give an appropriate performance. So I picked a script where that wouldn't be possible, because the lines were things like, Philip need a need please, Philip need a loaf of love. Yes, I think it is. Can I help you, sir? And those are the most sensical lines, but they're not said in a way that makes sense at all. So this script, it was Philip Glass Buys a Loaf of Bread by David Ives. The point of the script was it was meant to mimic Philip Glass's music. Philip Glass was a minimalist music composer. He's still alive. I don't know why I'm saying was. And minimalist music was known for being extremely repetitive and strange. So this playwright, David Ives, said, I'm going to write a play that's written the way Philip Glass writes his music. And I'm going to call it Philip Glass Buys a Loaf of Bread. And it's about him going to buy a loaf of bread, and that's it. And it's about so much more than that, but that was how it worked. So the script makes no sense. Now, sometimes, as you'll notice on the page I've included in my presentation, they sing this almost like a song. So they put the script to music. I decided not to do that because I was like, well, that will clearly take away my findings, because if I'm telling people crescendo here and ascend on this pitch here, then I'm manipulating the results. So I had them speak it. And so then what I did was I took baseline analyses of the voice for each character, and even for myself. So I had my actors, I recorded them telling truths and telling lies. I recorded them trying to deceive me, and I recorded them just in rehearsal as well. And I was able to find baseline prosodic signatures, so the way that the voice looks on paper for each of the actors. And I was able to go, okay, generally speaking, this is what Macy looks like when she's lying. This is what she looks like when she's telling the truth, as far as her voice goes. I did that for each of the actors. And then I was able to look at their waveforms and observe them in performance and also afterwards, and determine whether or not they were being truthful based on the waveforms. And so compared to previous studies, like the 2021 one by Goupil and al., I think it's pronounced Goupil, Compared to previous studies, we found that there were some discrepancies. So for example, 2 of my actors and myself all had what might be considered to be more dishonest prosthetic signatures when we were telling objective truths. Like we were telling something that was objectively true, but we just tended to have a more, with the exception of the slowness, we speak pretty quickly, with the exception of the slower tempo, we had a more dishonest prosthetic vocal signature. But when people are being dishonest, they tend to be a little bit more musical, and I had a cast of musical actors. So we were all very musical people, so I was like, it could be that. But I was able to see, what does it look like when this person's lying? What does it look like when they're telling the truth? And regardless of whether or not it correlated to the studies, I was able to tell what their signature was. I gotta cut some details because this is gonna be too long. Okay, so the script. The script, it's meant to look like minimalist music. So in minimalist music, there's something called common chords. And so these are chords that are common to various key signatures, and but then they'll all be used in one key where it wouldn't necessarily make sense in that progression, but it does because it can be used in all these different key signatures. Minimalist music. And so the words in Philip Glass Buys a Loaf of Bread are actually functioning like common chords. So you hear a series of sentences at the beginning of the show. It's like, can I help you, sir? Yes, I need a loaf of bread, please. Just a moment. It's time now. Let's go. Do you know that woman, sir? Yes, I loved her once. And then using those sentences, they reconstruct them into these nonsensical things like, Philip need a loaf of love. Yes, I think it is. Philip Glass, loaf of bread. Think it is? Help you, sir. Philip Glass, loaf of bread. So the words are like the common chords. It repeats as Philip Glass's music and most minimalist music does. The dialogue usually doesn't make sense because it's not supposed to make sense. It's supposed to show you what minimalist music is like. And one way that I got them to memorize it, because it was so nonsensical, so it didn't progress in a way that was logical. I would have them beat the floor in rehearsals and memorize it to a rhythm. So even though they didn't have a melody, they kind of had a baseline rhythm, and they could remember, okay, this part's faster, this part's slower, and that seemed to work. And now I give you Philip Glass Buys a Loaf of Bread. Buckle up.
Yes, I need a loaf of bread, please.
Just a moment.
It's time now.
Yes, let's go. Do you know that woman, sir?
Isn't that?
Think it is, think it is, think it is, think it is. Help you, sir? Help you, sir? Help you, sir? Help you, sir?
Yes, I need. 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 Yes, I need.
Philip Glass.
Think it is.
Philip Glass.
Think it is. Help you, sir?
Loaf of bread.
Help you, sir?
Loaf of bread.
Philip Glass.
Help you, sir?
Think it is.
Loaf of bread.
Think it is.
Help you, sir?
Philip Glass.
Loaf of bread. Yes, I.
Think it is.
Yes, I.
Think it is.
Yes, I.
Think it is.
Hey!
Loaf of bread.
Think it is.
Hey!
Loaf of bread.
Think it is.
Hey!
Loaf of bread.
Think it is.
Hey!
Philip Glass.
Think it is.
Hey!
Philip Glass.
Think it is.
Hey!
Philip Glass.
Is.
A.
Loaf of bread.
Philip Glass.
Is.
A.
Loaf of bread.
Think. Help. Is. Help.
Philip. Look. Philip.
Loaf.
Think. Can. Think.
Can. Philip.
Bread.
Philip.
Bread. Philip can't think bread. Bread? How Philip think Philip need bread loaf? Do I need a
Loaf of bread.
Can I need a
Loaf of bread.
Can I know
Loaf of bread.
I need bread.
I know.
I know.
I need bread.
I know.
I know.
I need bread.
I know.
Think, Philip.
Need.
Help. Think, Philip.
Need.
Help. Think, Philip.
Need.
Help.
Yes! Please!
Think, Philip.
Need.
Help you, sir. Think, Philip.
Need.
Help you, sir. Think, Philip.
Need.
Help you, sir.
Bread. Loaf.
Philip need. Help you, sir. Philip need. Help you, sir. Philip need. Help you, sir. Philip need.
Glass. Do you know?
Philip.
Do you know? 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 Glass lips. It was that memorable evening in March, out at the end of the jetty. She was lying there in a white cotton dress, and I mistook her for a rowboat.
Just a moment. It's time.
Please,
Let's go. Just a moment. It's time.
please,
Let's go. Just a moment. It's time.
please.
Let's go. Just a moment. It's time now. 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 Let's go. Go, 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 go. Time, 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 time.
It was a memorable evening in March. Out at the end of the jetty.
Time is a moment, sir. Time is a moment, sir. Time is a moment, sir. Time is.
Now,
Time is.
now,
Time is.
now.
Philip, a moment, sir. Philip, a moment, sir. Philip, a moment, sir. Time is.
Now,
Time is.
now,
Time is.
now. Go, 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 go. Time, 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 time.
Philip is.
Hey,
Moments. Time.
go! 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 Time! Time! Time!
Time is a moment, sir. Do you know that woman? Time is a moment, sir. Do you know that woman? Think, Philip.
I loved her once.
Think,
I
Philip.
loved her once.
Do you know that woman? Think, Philip.
I loved her once.
What's the matter? Philip.
I loved her once.
What's the matter?
I
Philip.
loved her once.
What's the matter? Philip.
I loved her once.
Just a moment.
Once.
Just a moment.
Once.
Just a moment.
Once.
Now.
Once.
Now.
Once.
Now. Nothing matters. Now. Nothing matters. Love. Now. Nothing matters. Her. Now. Nothing matters. Just a moment, sir.
Clap, 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 clap.
Philomena, Philomena,
Loaf of bread.
Philomena, Philomena.
Loaf of love.
What's the woman matter? Go.
Change.
What's the woman matter? Philip.
Go change.
What's the woman matter? Philip. Now change.
Need.
Woman.
Need.
Nothing.
Need.
Matter.
Need help. Need woman. No, nothing. Need matter. So what? Need woman. No, nothing. Need matter. Need change. Need woman. No, nothing. Need matter. It's time. Need woman. No, nothing. Need matter. Go love. Need woman. No, nothing. Need matter. Let's go. Need woman. No, nothing. Need matter. No change.
Yes, I loved her. Once.
What's the matter?
I also need some change.
All right, things I noticed. So deception and thought have the same prosodic signature for the most part. So when people are thinking, and this is consistent with previous studies, when people are thinking and when people are lying, it looks the same in the voice on paper. And that's because when you're lying, you're generally making things up. And so you're thinking more when you're lying. You're trying to construct a falsified event as opposed to recalling a past event, which is going to be easier. Based on this, I could predict when an actor was going to drop their line because I could be watching their voices go, and all of a sudden the thinking signature comes in. And when I see the thinking signature, I'm like, something's wrong. And then all of a sudden, boop, they drop the line. And I could get even more, because I did this over the course of rehearsals and performances, I could get even more like niche with this. So, some of my actors, there were moments, because this is so weird, and a lot of them hadn't done like a show with a script like this before. They were like, oh, I feel really in my head about this moment. Like I don't know how to play it. I'm questioning my choices. And I'm like, just go with your gut. And I could see when they were going with their gut and when all of a sudden they got in their head. And the interesting thing was their physicality would change too. You could see as their physicality becomes, their thought process becomes more about themselves and less about just responding and going and yes-anding to their partners. And it made a difference in the performance. It was really interesting. So you could see when the actor was engaged with their other on stage versus thinking about themselves. Now, things that you can't control. Even if you intend to say the line the exact same way every single night, no matter what, there are things beyond your control. For example, if you don't get enough sleep, that's going to affect your voice. If you have a hormone thing going on, that's going to affect your voice as well. Hormones have a huge impact on your voice. Depending on what you're eating, your diet, that can impact your voice as well. So that was something to take into account. Let's talk about prosody in the brain. Remember, vocal prosody is like the musicality of the voice. It's the way the voice moves in correlation to your thoughts. And what I thought was interesting was I found another study was done on vocal prosody in the brain. And there's a connection to prosody and the amygdala, which is the part of your brain that invokes fight or flight. And I thought this was interesting too, because a lot of these acting teachers, especially Meisner, talk about instinct. They're like, listen to your partner actively and respond based on instinct, given the stimuli. And vocal prosody, your amygdala is the part of the brain that is the most sensitive to someone else's vocal prosody. And in women, you are especially sensitive to vocal prosody, to the point where even a slight semitone increase in pitch can sometimes trigger the fight or flight. I thought that was really, really interesting. So I was like, listening really does trigger the instinctual gut response these acting teachers are looking for. And so that's why subtext is so important. What are you saying, the text, but what are you meaning when you say it, subtext? That's how you can turn, why don't you make me a sandwich, into I'm gonna kill you. Okay, so listening, very important. And what are you saying when what you say doesn't say anything, which is the point with this script with Philip Glass. We had to make a story. We came up with like a language of what these words meant, and they became symbols to us. Very modernist theater. Remember, symbols are big. So that's that for the amygdala. So again, this is just on paper. I have one of my actresses' prosodic signatures for dishonesty as well as my own. And what was consistent with deception was the tempo. So when the two of us were like thinking or when we were lying, our voice would slow down. It just did now as I was thinking too about how to say it. So you can see that it's just a very like slow, you're not getting a lot of this in the waveform. But also, when lying, people tend in Western cultures to crescendo, I actually flatline when I'm lying, and so does Olivia. So there's not a lot, you'll see some waveforms a little bit later that have a lot more of this kind of motion, but mine kind of looks like a flat little caterpillar. So when I'm lying, I try really hard to act serious all of a sudden. And I know this about myself. So this taught me that the better that a director knows an actor and like gets to know how they speak, the better they'll be at determining whether or not a performance is truthful. This also raised some questions, but I'll save that for later in the slides. Here you have the opportunity to literally see it in action. So I've got some waveforms here, and I've got the actresses that they are associated with. Both of these actresses were ones who, like me, have a more deceptive, honest prosodic signature, but we do slow down when we are being deceptive or when we're thinking. So both of these two actresses, these are two of the ones that I was like, they have the same signature as me pretty much. So this first one where it says Appendix 1, Mateer Deception on October 6th, or Mateer Deception 2 on October 6th. So she almost dropped a line, and you can see that compared to the rest, the volume's significantly lower than the rest of her waveforms, and there also seems to be a crescendo into the phrase. So that is more consistent with traditional lying. And there's less musicality, so she's flatlining a little bit. However, on the second time that she says the same line, and you can't hear it, but I have it circled on there, there's more musicality, there's a stronger attack, and there's less of a, flatline situation going on. You can tell that there's a lot more happening here. There's a lot more volume, the pitch is higher. Now, on Olivia's, that's bell deceptive prosody. So you can see she's delivering the same line twice, but they look significantly different. Both of these scenarios on this slide were moments where my actresses almost dropped their lines the first time, and then when they repeated the lines, because the script is really repetitive, you can see that once they knew, oh, I am in the right sequence, suddenly the deceptive cues went away. October 6th was still a kind of early rehearsal for us because I believe I didn't cast this till the end of September. So they were already off book and they were doing great. Very proud of them. Okay, now here we have two more examples from Mateer and from Belle, who were both wonderful. So for Mateer, on this first waveform that we have on, if you're looking at it, the left on the slide, so Mateer dropped a line. Like she went a while before she actually said the line that she was supposed to say. It was kind of quiet on stage. However, when she came back in, you could tell based on her prosodic signatures that she had an honest signature here. This was honest for her. It was very consistent with how she's being when she's truthfully speaking. So even though she almost dropped the line, that tells me that she was still engaged in the scene. So she was still in the moment. She wasn't in her head. And then when she did realize she dropped the line, she didn't sit there and like mentally berate herself for a second and be like, oh my God. She just came right back in, still in it, still engaged, still in the moment, which is awesome. So awesome for an actor to do. We love it when that happens. So you can literally physically see that here on the page. Now, Olivia, on the other hand, we see her deceptive cue in action when she goes to drop a line. Now, something that Olivia did when she'd lie that was interesting is she'd kind of do like a subito forte sometimes. And if you're not a musician, what subito forte means is subito forte is when you're quiet and then suddenly loud. So she would like come in and say something like, yes, I think it is. So it would be like super quiet, bam, really loud. And then sometimes she'd get quiet again. And so that's what I bracketed over here. You can actually see it happening in action. Now, some of these, it might look like the person is speaking, but what was actually happening is multiple people were talking, and then it would like pick up, I would isolate and bracket other people's cues. So when I wanted to point out what an individual was doing. For further research, I would want to use lavalier mics so I can isolate each person's vocals, and then I could get a cleaner read. But I didn't have the budget for that, okay? I just had a baby before doing this. I did not have the budget. All right, I already covered the lavalier mics, but essentially a lavalier mic, if you don't know what it is, it's like a microphone that goes up here, or you can pin it on your shirt. And so I felt like this would be easier because then it's a one-directional mic. It's just going to capture the one person who's speaking, and I can look at each person's waveforms without interference from the other people, as opposed to, you noticed on some of the other waveform observations that I had, it was kind of really fuzzy all around because other people were still moving, doing their cues, etc. So I think that would be more valuable. And like I mentioned before, so I said that the longer a director gets to know their actor, the better of an idea of a truthful performance they'll be able to like discern. That made no sense. The better they'll be able to discern whether or not the actor's performance is truthful, because they'll know. They'll, like, even if you don't know, even if you don't sit there and observe your friend's waveforms by having them deliberately lie to you, like, you get to know how people are when they lie. My parents know when I'm lying, they can hear it. But I try not to lie. So my point is, the director will know whether or not you're invested the better they get to know you. But that raises the question of, does the audience? Because the 2021 Goupil and al. Study, it showed that across 3 languages, 3 Western languages, people perceive the same markers of the voice as either meaning something's honest or dishonest. So if your audience doesn't know you, are they going to interpret a truthful performance as dishonest? I don't know. So I think that's where what comes into is, are you engaging with the other actors on stage? I think honesty in this case is also something you can see. So it's not just the voice alone. So would Sanford Meisner support this? Oh, absolutely not. Sanford Meisner did not believe in recordings. He did not want, like, if you were going to play Hamlet, he'd be like, you better not go watch anyone else play Hamlet. You know, some of the girls in this class are not, there's only one, but they're working on You Can Drive a Person Crazy from Company. And we've watched some videos of people performing it. He would be so against that. He does not want any outside influence. Well, I wanted to look at the waveforms because Sanford Meisner used to put his face in his hands and then say, like, oh, that was truthful. And so I'm like, okay, Sandy, I'm trying to back you up here. But he would not like it. Is this objective truth? I think there's a lot that goes into objective truth. I think it's all about how much information can we gather? And when would this be used? Like, you're not going to sit there as the actor watching your waveforms, are you? No. But let's say that you're in college and you're doing a drama class and you keep getting the note that, I just don't believe you. That's a common note. I just don't believe you. That wasn't truthful. I just didn't believe it, you know? That can be really frustrating because it's not something tangible that you can change. So what you might want to do is record yourself performing your monologue or your scene, whatever, and look at your waveforms and see, like, what is my voice doing? Record yourself when you lie, record yourself when you tell the truth, compare it and see, like, oh, what am I doing that this isn't reading as a very truthful performance? Because now I'm seeing that my waveforms look dishonest. It's just a tool. It's all about tools that you can have in your tool belt, and I think that this could be a useful tool. Also, Philip Glass Buys a Loaf of Bread is a really good show. I think it's awesome. I've been obsessed with it for years. So I recommend Philip Glass Buys a Loaf of Bread. It might not be your cup of tea, but I think any show, that's the type of theater I can do all day. That's not really an important takeaway, but it's a takeaway. Okay, class, that's really all I have for you today. Thank you so much. Thank you to my wonderful substitute teacher. Yes, thank you. Please do not ask her for keys, or him, whichever. Have a great day. I look forward to seeing you on Friday. Be safe, make good choices. Mwah. Bye.